The ring slipped from his fingers and rolled across the conference room floor, spinning once, twice, before stopping at her shoes, and in that frozen second, Matthew Carter realized his entire life had just cracked open in front of everyone. He wasn't on one knee for love. He wasn't ready for forever. He was a single father barely holding his days together, and yet the word that had escaped his mouth moments earlier could not be taken back. Will you marry me? The silence was so loud it felt like thunder pressing against his chest. Before this moment, Matthew's life had been defined by quiet survival. He was 37, living in a modest townhouse outside Columbus, Ohio, raising his 8-year-old son Jacob alone since his wife's sudden passing 3 years earlier. Every morning began before sunrise, packing lunches, tying shoelaces, checking homework, and swallowing grief like it was part of breakfast. He worked as a project manager at a mid-sized healthcare tech company, the kind of job that demanded precision and calm, even when your heart was anything but. To his colleagues, Matthew was reliable, polite, and distant. To Jacob, he was everything, even when he felt like he was failing. The colleague standing in front of him when the ring stopped rolling was Hannah Brooks. She was the team's operations coordinator, known for her steady presence and soft-spoken confidence. Hannah had been widowed young, too, though most people at work didn't know that. She carried her loss quietly, like a well-worn coat she refused to take off. For nearly 2 years, she and Matthew had worked side by side, sharing long hours, late deadlines, and the unspoken understanding that comes from knowing pain without explaining it. They had coffee together in the break room, exchanged tired smiles during meetings, and once, during a snowstorm, Matthew had admitted he didn't know how to fix a broken heart for his son. Hannah had listened without trying to fix anything, and that had meant more than he ever said. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment right now to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind us love often arrives when we least expect it. The proposal had not been planned. It had been a mistake born from exhaustion and emotion. That morning, Matthew had discovered Jacob's school project crumpled in the backpack, forgotten, and the disappointment in his son's eyes had stayed with him all day. At work, the team was presenting a major rollout to senior leadership. Hannah had helped him prepare late into the night all week, offering quiet reassurance when his confidence slipped. During the presentation, Matthew had stumbled over his words, his thoughts tangled, until Hannah calmly stepped in, guiding the room back on track with grace. When the applause came, something inside Matthew broke and healed at the same time. After the meeting, still buzzing with adrenaline and relief, Matthew reached into his pocket to retrieve his phone, and instead pulled out the small velvet box he'd bought weeks earlier. It was meant for something else entirely, a keepsake ring for Jacob, a symbol of promise he planned to give his son on the anniversary of his mother's death. His fingers betrayed him, his heart outran his mind, and the words fell out in front of his colleagues before he understood what he was doing. Now, as the room held its breath, Hannah bent down, picked up the ring, and looked at Matthew with an expression that wasn't shock or embarrassment. It was calm, steady, almost tender. And then she said yes, not loudly, not dramatically, but with a certainty that stunned him more than a refusal ever could have. The days that followed were a blur of whispered conversations, awkward congratulations, and sleepless nights. Matthew tried to explain to Hannah that it had been an accident, that he wasn't ready, that he didn't even know how to love without fear anymore. Hannah listened, as she always did, and told him she understood. Her yes, she explained, wasn't to a perfect future or a fairy tale. It was to the possibility of building something honest, slowly, with all the broken pieces on the table. For Matthew, the real challenge wasn't public perception or office gossip. It was Jacob. Telling his son felt like walking on fragile ice. One evening after dinner, Matthew sat beside Jacob on the couch and explained that Hannah was someone special, that she cared deeply, and that life might change a little. Jacob's reaction wasn't anger or sadness, it was fear. Fear that loving someone new meant forgetting his mother. That night, Matthew realized how much he had underestimated his son's grief, and his own. Hannah never pushed. She didn't try to replace anyone or rush affection. When Matthew invited her over for dinner weeks later, she brought board games and let Jacob decide if he wanted to play. Sometimes he did, sometimes he didn't. She accepted both with grace. Slowly, Jacob began to ask questions about her life, about her childhood in Michigan, about her dog she had lost years ago. Trust grew not through grand gestures but through consistency. Work became easier in unexpected ways. Matthew found himself laughing again, really laughing, during lunch breaks. Hannah shared stories of her own mistakes, her doubts, her faith that love wasn't meant to be perfect, just present. There were setbacks, too. Days when Matthew pulled away, overwhelmed by guilt for feeling happy. Nights when memories crashed in without warning. Each time, Hannah reminded him that grief and love could coexist, that honoring the past didn't mean rejecting the future. As months passed, the engagement no longer felt accidental. It felt earned. Matthew learned how to let go of control, how to ask for help, how to believe he deserved joy again. Jacob began calling Hannah by her name without hesitation, sometimes saving her a seat at the table. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, Matthew watched the two of them bake cookies in the kitchen, flour on their faces, laughter filling the house, and something inside him finally settled. Just before the ending, leave a comment below telling us what this story made you feel, or share a moment when love surprised you when you least expected it. The wedding was small, held in a chapel just outside town, sunlight spilling through stained glass. There were no grand speeches, no promises of perfection, just two people choosing each other with open eyes and open hearts. When Matthew looked at Hannah, he no longer saw the woman who said yes to a mistake. He saw the partner who had seen him at his weakest and stayed anyway. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that healing doesn't mean forgetting and that love can grow from the most unexpected moments, please like, comment, and share this video. Your engagement helps these stories reach others who might need hope today. Matthew never planned to propose that day. But sometimes, life doesn't wait for us to be ready. Sometimes, love arrives quietly, calmly, and says yes before we even know how to ask.